Hey there. Ready for deep dive number 6?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
We're cracking open book number 6 out of 10 in Gerry Adkins' Real Wealth Blueprint series.
Okay.
This one is called the Irrevocable Trust Master Plan. You can find it on Amazon.
Gotcha.
And today, we're taking you deep into the world of irrevocable business trusts.
These aren't your everyday trusts. They've
Right.
got a history as impressive as their potential impact.
Yeah.
Even families like the Rockefellers have used them.
Okay, so right off the bat, Adkins drops the Rockefeller name. I'm intrigued. What is it about irrevocable business trusts that makes them so powerful, even for those of us who aren't building a dynasty?
Well, Adkins argues that understanding the historical context of trusts is crucial to grasping their power in modern business. He dives into how, centuries ago, the very concept of separating legal ownership from beneficial ownership was revolutionary. Think back to medieval times, with knights entrusting their estates before heading off on crusades.
So it's like, hey, hold on to my castle while I'm gone. But with, less chainmail and more legal paperwork.
Exactly. This core idea of separating assets for protection evolved over time. Fast forward to today, and we've got these sophisticated structures, irrevocable business trusts, that can be absolute game changers for protecting your assets, navigating taxes, and maintaining privacy in a way traditional setups can't match.
It's like taking a page from history and applying it to today's financial landscape. Now, when we say irrevocable, that means what I think it means. Like there's no turning back once you set this type of trust in motion.
Precisely. It's a big decision, but as Adkins points out, that's also where their strength lies. It's not just a temporary arrangement, it's a solid, long-term strategy. Think of an irrevocable trust, like a well-crafted contract. It outlines exactly how your assets will be managed and distributed, even when you're not around to oversee it.
So you're creating this separate legal entity, almost like a financial fortress around your wealth. You're still involved, but your personal assets are protected. Clever, right? Adkins mentions that even the Vanderbilts, despite their immense wealth, failed to protect their fortune for future generations.
Right, and that's a cautionary tale if ever there was one. Adkins uses the Vanderbilts to really drive home the point that wealth, without the right protection, is incredibly vulnerable. He contrasts them with the Rockefellers, who, through strategic use of irrevocable trusts and a family office, ensured their family's wealth not only survived, but thrived.
Talk about learning from the best. Adkins used to suggest that anyone can use these strategies, not just billionaires. He breaks down this often intimidating world of trusts into clear, actionable steps. He even gets into the nitty-gritty of setting up multiple trusts for different parts of your business.
He provides an interesting example of this, drawing a parallel to how large hotels often separate assets like the building, the pool, the parking lot, and so on, into different trusts for liability purposes.
Okay, so you're telling me my local hotel might have a separate trust just for the ice machine. Wild. But it makes sense, right? If you're a business owner, especially in a field with inherent risks, you don't want one lawsuit to wipe out everything you've worked for.
Exactly. Adkins emphasizes that creating this separation is like having a legal firewall for your assets. He compares the business owner's role to that of a contracted general manager involved in the business, but with a level of separation that protects their personal assets. It's about creating that strategic barrier to safeguard what you've worked hard for.
So it's not just about being wealthy, it's about being strategically wealthy. He even suggests using different trusts for different parts of your business, just like those hotels do. If I owned a chain of, say, quirky coffee shops.
You might have separate trusts for each location, for the roasting equipment, for the brand itself, you name it. It compartmentalizes potential risks and allows for greater control and flexibility.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like diversifying your investment portfolio, but on a whole other level. You're diversifying your risk.
Precisely. And speaking of diversification, Adkins argues that irrevocable business trusts can also be real game changers when it comes to taxes.
Oh, yes, let's talk taxes. I mean, we're talking about building real wealth here, and taxes play a huge role in that.
Absolutely. Adkins, drawing on his own experience in the financial world, really seems to know his stuff. He breaks down how irrevocable business trusts can be structured to potentially minimize your tax burden. He even gets into forming different types of trusts, including those designed for charitable giving, which I thought was a really interesting angle.
That is interesting. So you could potentially lessen your tax burden and support causes you care about at the same time.
You've got it. He dives into the nuances of various trust types, like the asset protection trust, which does exactly what it sounds like, or the charitable trust, which offers tax benefits while supporting causes you care about. He even gets into more complex structures, like grantor retained annuity trusts or jurots.
Okay, slow down there. Great. We might need a bit more explanation on that one.
You're right. Adkins points out that while this book offers a blueprint, it's essential to work with qualified professionals who can explain things like juris and make sure it's all set up correctly.
It's like having a seasoned architect guide you through building your dream house. You need the right people to make sure it's built to last, but you need to know the basics to even dream the dream. So let's go back to those REITs. What makes them so special?
A DREIT is a way to potentially transfer wealth, often appreciating assets, to beneficiaries with minimal gift tax consequences. Essentially, you're setting up a trust that pays you a fixed income for a certain period, and then whatever's left over goes to your beneficiaries, potentially without any gift tax if structured properly.
Okay, that's pretty clever. It's like a financial safety net that provides for both you and your loved ones in the future. But like you said, we're just scratching the surface here. This is where having that personalized advice from experts is what will truly empower you to build your own real wealth blueprint, right?
Absolutely. Adkins consistently emphasizes seeking professional guidance. It's about making informed decisions and having the right team in your corner. This book is a fantastic starting point, but you've got to personalize it to your own situation.
It's all about making informed decisions, right? This book provides the knowledge, but having that personalized advice from experts is what will truly empower you to build your own real wealth blueprint. Now, I can't help but think about the legal side of things. I mean, we're talking about legally separating assets, tax implications. It sounds like you'd need a law degree just to wrap your head around it all.
You're not wrong to be thinking about that. And that's another area where Adkins's book shines. He dedicates a significant portion of it to the legal ins and outs of irrevocable business trusts.
So he's not just throwing out financial strategies without addressing the legal realities.
Not at all. He dives deep into the importance of the trust agreement itself, outlining how it functions as the rule book for the entire trust.
This is starting to sound like a crash course in Trust Law 101.
Well, think of it this way. If you're going to build a financial fortress, you need to make sure the blueprints are rock solid. Adkins emphasizes that the trust agreement needs to be airtight, covering everything from how assets are managed to what happens if a beneficiary passes away, even how disputes are resolved. He really stresses the importance of having experienced legal counsel involved in drafting this document.
So no cutting corners when it comes to the legal side of things. It sounds like finding the right attorney is just as important as finding the right financial advisor when it comes to setting up one of these trusts. It's about building a team of experts who understand your vision.
Exactly. This isn't the time for DIY legal work. You need an experienced attorney who specializes in trusts to ensure that your trust agreement is airtight and effectively carries out your wishes.
Someone who speaks fluent legalese. But seriously, it makes sense. These are big decisions with long-term implications. You need to be sure you've got the right people in your corner. Speaking of important figures, Adkins also talks a lot about the role of the trustee.
Absolutely. The trustee is essentially the steward of your wealth, the one responsible for managing the trust's assets according to your wishes.
So choosing the right trustee is like choosing a financial guardian for your legacy.
That's a great way to put it. Adkins stresses that this isn't a decision to be taken lightly. You need someone who is trustworthy, competent, and has the experience and expertise to handle potentially complex financial matters.
It's almost like finding a financial superhero to watch over your fortune. But seriously, it makes sense that you'd want someone who understands your vision and will act in the best interest of the trust and its beneficiaries.
Precisely. And Adkins provides some really helpful guidance on how to go about finding and selecting the right trustee for your specific situation. He even discusses the option of using a professional trustee, like a trust company, which can offer a level of expertise and objectivity that's hard to beat.
It's like having a whole team of financial experts at your disposal. That sounds like a huge relief, don't you think? Especially when you're dealing with something as important as your financial legacy.
Absolutely. It takes a lot of the pressure off of you knowing that your assets are in capable and trustworthy hands.
So we've got our financial fortress, our airtight legal documents, our financial superhero trustee. Is there anything else we need to consider when it comes to building this irrevocable trust master plan?
Well, Adkins argues that it's not just about the structure of the trust itself. It's also about understanding the broader context in which it operates. He dives into the history of trusts, tracing their evolution from ancient Rome and English common law to their modern-day iterations.
So we're talking knights and castles. Tell me more.
Imagine a knight heading off to the Crusades needed someone trustworthy to manage his land while he was away. This led to the idea of separating legal ownership from beneficial ownership, the very foundation of a trust.
So instead of leaving the keys to the castle with the court jester, they'd entrust it to someone who actually knew what they were doing. Makes sense.
Precisely. Adkins uses these historical examples to illustrate how the core principles of trusts have remained relevant throughout the centuries. It's about understanding those fundamental concepts of asset protection, control, and legacy planning that have stood the test of time.
It's like he's saying, look, these strategies have been around for centuries for a reason. They work. But he also seems to be emphasizing that while the principles might be ancient, the strategies themselves need to be adapted for the modern world.
You've hit the nail on the head. He talks about how globalization, for example, has opened up new possibilities for structuring trusts in jurisdictions with favorable legal and tax environments.
So it's not just about protecting assets anymore. It's about strategic planning on a global scale.
Exactly. And it's not just about geography. He also talks about how technology is playing an increasingly important role in the world of trusts.
Technology and trust. That's an interesting combination. Tell me more.
Well, think about it. Online platforms are making it easier than ever to set up and manage trusts, while things like blockchain technology are being explored as a way to enhance security and transparency in trust administration.
Wow, blockchain and trusts. Now that's a concept I haven't heard before. It sounds like we're on the cusp of a whole new era for irrevocable business trusts.
Absolutely. Adkins does a great job of not just explaining the current landscape, but also giving us a glimpse into the future of wealth management.
It's like he's saying, this is where the puck is going, to borrow a hockey analogy. But before we get too futuristic, let's circle back to those tax benefits we touched on earlier. I think that's an area where a lot of our listeners are probably eager to learn more.
You're right. Taxes are a major factor in any financial strategy, and Adkins knows this. He dedicates a whole chapter to the tax implications of irrevocable business trusts.
So give us the inside scoop. How can these trusts actually help minimize my tax burden?
Well, it's not a simple answer, as it depends on a lot of factors, like the specific trust structure, the jurisdiction, and current tax laws. But in general, one of the main advantages of an irrevocable business trust is its potential for tax optimization.
So it's like creating a tax-efficient entity that operates alongside your business.
Exactly. By transferring assets to the trust, you're essentially shifting the tax liability from yourself to the trust, which may be subject to more favorable tax rates or have access to certain deductions and exemptions.
That sounds like a win-win situation. But you're right, the specifics are crucial. You need to work with experts who understand the ins and outs of trust taxation to ensure you're maximizing your benefits while staying compliant with all applicable laws.
Absolutely. And that's something Adkins stresses throughout the book, the importance of seeking professional advice tailored to your specific circumstances. He provides the framework, the knowledge, but putting it into practice requires a team of experts in your corner.
It's all about making informed decisions, right? This book provides the knowledge, but having that personalized advice from experts is what will truly empower you to build your own real wealth blueprint. And who knows, maybe you'll be the next Rockefeller success story.
Now, wouldn't that be something?
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's take a closer look at one of the most compelling reasons people set up irrevocable business trusts. Asset protection. We live in a litigious society, and protecting your hard-earned wealth has never been more crucial.
You're right. It's like navigating a minefield out there. One wrong step and everything you've worked for could be at risk.
Exactly. So how do irrevocable business trusts act as that financial fortress we keep talking about? Give us the details.
Well, think of it this way. With an irrevocable business trust, you're creating a legal barrier between you and your assets.
Okay.
Those assets no longer belong to you personally. They belong to the trust itself, which is a separate legal entity.
So it's like you're saying, hey, this wealth isn't mine anymore. It belongs to this separate entity that I've set up. But you're still pulling the strings behind the scenes, right?
Exactly. You might be the one who created the trust and defined its terms, but legally speaking, those assets are held by the trust for the benefit of the beneficiaries you've named.
Okay, I see how that could be helpful.
Yeah.
So if someone were to sue me personally, they wouldn't have a claim on the assets held in the trust.
Precisely. And it's not just personal lawsuits.
Right.
This protection can extend to business debts, lawsuits against your business, even things like bankruptcy. Adkins shares a story about a real estate developer who used an irrevocable trust to protect his personal assets when a major project went south.
Oh, wow. That sounds like the kind of financial nightmare scenario we all hope to avoid.
Exactly. And that's the peace of mind Adkins emphasizes throughout the book.
Yeah.
With the right structure in place, even if things go wrong in your business, your personal assets, your home, your savings are shielded.
It's like that saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. But even with all these protections in place, isn't it possible for someone to challenge an irrevocable trust in court?
It's definitely possible, but Adkins argues that a well-drafted trust agreement created with the guidance of an experienced attorney is your best defense.
Okay.
The key is to ensure the trust is established for legitimate asset protection purposes,
Right.
not as a way to hide assets from legitimate creditors.
So transparency and ethical conduct are still paramount.
Absolutely. Adkins is a big proponent of ethical wealth building, and he emphasizes that these strategies should be used responsibly and within the bounds of the law.
That makes sense. Now, we've talked a lot about asset protection and taxes, but Adkins also touches on another key aspect, privacy. In today's world where information is everywhere, privacy has become more valuable than ever. How do these irrevocable business trusts stack up in that department?
That's a great question, and one that Adkins addresses in detail. Irrevocable business trusts can offer a high degree of privacy, especially compared to other business structures.
So if I'm sitting on the recipe for the world's best-selling energy drink, an irrevocable trust might be just what I need to keep those secret ingredients under wraps.
You got it. Because these trusts aren't subject to the same public disclosure requirements as, say, a publicly traded company.
Right.
They can provide a level of anonymity and confidentiality that's hard to beat.
It's like a vault for your valuable information. I can see why that would be appealing to entrepreneurs, inventors, or anyone dealing with sensitive information.
Exactly. And Adkins gives some great examples in the book, like a family business that used an irrevocable trust to protect their secret recipes for generations.
It's like those closely guarded family recipes that get passed down through the generations. But instead of a recipe for the world's best apple pie, we're talking about protecting intellectual property, financial details, the very foundation of your business.
Precisely. It's about maintaining control and protecting what's yours. And that brings us back to the importance of the trust agreement itself.
Oh.
It's the blueprint for how the trust operates and a key element of ensuring your privacy is maintained.
So tell me more about this all-important trust agreement.
Sure.
What are some of the key elements that need to be addressed?
Well, first and foremost, you need to clearly identify the who's who of the trust world.
Okay.
The grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiaries.
Right.
The grantor, as we know, is the one creating the trust and transferring assets into it.
Right. That's the person who's basically saying, I'm putting these assets into this trust.
Exactly. Then we have the trustee, the one responsible for managing the trust's assets and carrying out the terms of the trust agreement.
That's our financial superhero.
Exactly. And finally, the beneficiaries are the individuals or organizations who will ultimately benefit from the trust's assets.
Well, so those are the folks who will eventually reap the rewards, so to speak.
You got it. It sounds like each role comes with a lot of responsibility.
It sounds like it. And that's why Adkins stresses the importance of choosing the right people or entities for each role. You need to have complete trust and confidence in their ability to manage your assets and make decisions in accordance with your wishes.
Absolutely. He even suggests having conversations with potential trustees and beneficiaries before finalizing the agreement to ensure everyone understands their roles and responsibilities.
That makes a lot of sense. These are big decisions with long-term implications. You don't want to leave anything to chance.
Exactly. And that's just the beginning.
Right.
The trust agreement also needs to clearly define the purpose of the trust, specify the assets being transferred into it, and outline how those assets will be managed and distributed. This includes things like investment strategies, distribution schedules, and any restrictions or conditions that may apply.
It's almost like creating a roadmap for your wealth. You're mapping out where you want it to go and how you want it to be managed even after you're gone.
That's a great way to put it. And just like a roadmap, you want to make sure your trust agreement is detailed and comprehensive enough to navigate any unexpected detours or roadblocks that may arise along the way.
So what are some of these potential detours we should be prepared for?
For example, Adkins suggests you consider what happens if a beneficiary passes away or becomes incapacitated.
Oh, right. Life throws curveballs, and we need to be prepared.
Exactly. The trust agreement should specify how those situations are handled.
Right.
It should also outline how disputes among beneficiaries will be resolved and clearly define the trustee's powers and limitations.
So it's not just about saying, here's my money, manage it wisely. It's about anticipating potential issues and creating a plan for every scenario.
Precisely. And that's another area where having that legal expertise is so crucial.
Yeah.
An experienced attorney can help you anticipate potential issues and draft provisions that protect your interests and ensure your wishes are carried out even in unforeseen circumstances.
It's all about that peace of mind, knowing that your legacy is in good hands no matter what the future holds.
Exactly. Now, something else that needs to be addressed in the trust agreement is the issue of compensation for the trustee.
Okay.
Managing a trust is a significant responsibility, and they deserve to be fairly compensated for their time and effort.
Right. You want to make sure you're attracting and retaining qualified individuals or institutions to manage the trust effectively. So how is trustee compensation typically structured?
Well, there are a few different approaches, and Adkins outlines each of them in detail. The best option really depends on the complexity of the trust, the trustee's responsibilities, and of course, the grantor's preferences. One common method is to base compensation on a percentage of the trust's assets under management.
So as the trust grows, so does their compensation. That makes sense. Everyone likes to see their investments grow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It incentivizes the trustee to grow the trust's value over time. Another common approach is to pay the trustee a fixed fee for their services. This can be a good option for trusts with relatively stable assets or where the trustee's responsibilities are clearly defined and manageable.
It sounds like there are a lot of options to consider.
There are.
I imagine this is an area where having that expert advice from an attorney and a financial advisor would be invaluable.
Absolutely. It's about finding a compensation structure that aligns with the trustee's role and the grantor's expectations.
Right.
And that's often best determined with expert guidance.
It's all about that open communication and clear expectations. Right. So there are no surprises down the road.
Precisely. Now, in addition to trustee compensation, it's also important to address the issue of accounting and reporting within the trust agreement.
Okay.
After all, you want to ensure that the trust's finances are being managed responsibly and that beneficiaries are kept in the loop.
That makes sense. Transparency is key to building and maintaining trust, especially when it comes to family wealth.
Right.
So how does the trust agreement ensure the financial accountability?
Well, for starters, the trust agreement should outline how often the trustee is required to provide account statements to the beneficiaries, whether that's annually, quarterly, or on some other schedule.
Okay, so it's like getting a regular financial report card.
Exactly. It should also specify who is responsible for keeping records of the trust's transactions and how those records will be maintained, whether it's in digital format, physical copies, or both.
So it's about establishing clear guidelines and procedures to ensure that everything is documented and accounted for.
Precisely. This not only helps to prevent misunderstandings or disputes, but also provides a framework for responsible and transparent trust management.
It's all about protecting the integrity of the trust and ensuring its long-term success, which is ultimately what Adkins emphasizes throughout the book. Now, speaking of the long term, we can't forget about the what-ifs of life, right? What happens if a trustee is no longer able to serve?
That's a great point. And Adkins addresses this directly in the book.
Okay.
He dedicates a whole section to the importance of appointing successor trustees within the trust agreement.
Successor trustees. So it's like having a backup plan for your financial backup plan.
Exactly. Life is unpredictable.
Yeah,
You want to make sure the trust is prepared for any eventuality.
right.
Adkins really drives this point home with a story about a family business that nearly fell apart when the original trustee unexpectedly passed away without a successor in place.
Oh, wow. Talk about a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
So how does one go about choosing a successor trustee? Are there certain criteria to consider?
Absolutely. Adkins stresses that choosing a successor trustee is just as crucial, if not more so, than choosing the initial trustee. You're essentially entrusting them with the responsibility of carrying out your legacy and managing assets that may have been in your family for generations.
Right.
It's not just about finding someone who's good with numbers.
Right.
It's about finding someone who understands the bigger picture,
Okay.
your values, your vision for the future.
It sounds like you need to choose wisely. What are some of the key qualities to look for?
Well, experience and expertise are definitely important. You want someone who understands the complexities of trust management,
Right.
has a solid grasp of financial matters, and is capable of making sound decisions under pressure.
Basically a financial superhero in their own right. Are there any other qualities that are important in a successor trustee?
Absolutely. Integrity is paramount.
Okay.
You need someone who you can trust implicitly to act in the best interests of the beneficiaries and uphold the terms of the trust agreement.
Right.
You'll also want to consider their communication skills and ability to work effectively with others.
Right.
Managing a trust often involves collaborating with beneficiaries,
Sure.
attorneys, financial advisors, and other professionals, so strong interpersonal skills are a must.
It's almost like finding that perfect blend of financial expertise, diplomacy, and maybe even a little bit of therapist thrown in.
You're not wrong. It's a tall order.
Right.
But finding the right successor trustee is crucial for ensuring the continued success and legacy of the trust.
Right.
And that's why Adkins encourages starting these conversations early on, even while you're still in the planning stages.
So don't wait till the last minute to start thinking about your successor trustee. Makes sense. Now let's talk about how the assets within the trust are actually distributed to the beneficiaries.
Right, because eventually that financial fortress needs to release some of its treasures.
Exactly. So are we talking about a lump sum payment when the grantor passes away? Or is it more structured than that?
It can be structured in a variety of ways.
Okay.
And Adkins lays out the different options in detail.
Okay.
One common method is to distribute the assets outright to the beneficiaries
Well,
once they reach a certain age or meet specific criteria outlined in the trust agreement.
so it's like a financial coming-of-age gift.
Exactly. But Adkins cautions against simply handing over large sums of money to young or financially inexperienced beneficiaries.
Yeah, I can see how that could backfire.
Right. So he suggests considering things like staggered distributions,
Like,
where beneficiaries receive a portion of their inheritance at different ages or milestones. This can help ensure they're equipped to handle their wealth responsibly.
it's like building in financial training wheels. You're gradually giving them more responsibility as they mature.
Precisely. And for those who want to provide ongoing support, there's the option of keeping the assets in the trust indefinitely,
Okay.
with the trustee distributing income to the beneficiaries on a regular basis.
So the trust acts as a perpetual source of income.
Yeah.
A financial safety net that's always there.
Exactly. And this method can be particularly beneficial for beneficiaries with special needs or those who might be at risk of squandering their inheritance.
Right.
It ensures they have ongoing financial support while protecting those assets from potential creditors or, let's face it, poor financial decisions.
It's like having a financial guardian angel watching over them.
Yeah.
Now, Adkins also talks about incorporating charitable giving into these trusts, which I found really interesting.
Absolutely. And it's something he's a big advocate for, this
Yeah.
idea of using wealth not just for personal gain, but for good.
It's like that saying, from those to whom much is given, much is expected. But it's not just about giving back, it's about strategic philanthropy.
Exactly. Adkins lays out how you can structure a trust to support your favorite charities, even after you're gone. It could be a percentage of the trust's assets, specific gifts, or even setting up a charitable foundation within the trust itself.
Wow, that's next-level philanthropy. You're essentially embedding your values into the very structure of the trust. It's like weaving social responsibility into the fabric of wealth management.
Precisely. And Adkins argues that this kind of strategic giving can not only benefit the charities you care about,
Right.
but also provide tax benefits for the trust itself.
So it's a win-win situation. Now, before we get too caught up in all these amazing benefits, Adkins does caution that there are also some potential drawbacks to irrevocable business trusts that we need to be aware of.
You're right. It's not all sunshine and roses. As with any financial strategy, there are always two sides to the coin.
So let's talk about the flip side. What are some of the potential downsides or challenges that individuals and families should be aware of?
Well, one of the primary drawbacks, as we've touched upon earlier, is the irrevocable nature of these trusts.
Right.
Once you've established an irrevocable trust and transferred assets into it, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to make changes.
So there are no takebacks. Once the trust is in motion, it's pretty much set in stone.
Exactly. It's a significant commitment, and that's why Adkins stresses the importance of careful planning and seeking expert legal advice before taking the plunge. He shares a story about a business owner who rushed into setting up a trust without fully understanding the implications and later regretted some of the decisions he had made.
It's like getting a tattoo. You want to be sure it's something you can live with for the long haul.
That's a great analogy. And then there's the complexity of it all.
Right.
Irrevocable business trusts aren't exactly a walk in the park to understand, let alone set up and manage.
Yeah, we've been throwing around a lot of legal and financial jargon today.
Exactly. It can feel overwhelming, and that's why Adkins consistently emphasizes the need for professional guidance.
Right.
Trying to navigate this world on your own can be risky.
Right.
You could end up making costly mistakes.
Yeah.
Or worse, setting up a trust that doesn't actually achieve your goals.
So finding that dream team of advisors,
Yeah,
attorneys, financial planners, tax professionals is essential.
absolutely. They'll help you navigate the complexities, avoid common pitfalls, and create a trust that's tailored to your unique needs and goals.
It's about making strategic decisions now that will benefit you and your loved ones for years to come.
Exactly. It's an investment in your financial future, and it's not something to be taken lightly.
Well said. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Gerry Adkins's The Irrevocable Trust Master Plan, what are some final takeaways for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Building real wealth isn't just about making money.
Right.
It's about protecting what you earn and ensuring it works for you and your loved ones for the long term. Irrevocable business trusts, while not a one-size-fits-all solution, offer a powerful framework for doing just that.
They're like the financial equivalent of building a legacy.
Exactly. But, like we've discussed, it's crucial to approach these trusts strategically and ethically.
Right.
Adkins is a firm believer in responsible wealth creation,
Right.
and he emphasizes throughout the book that these strategies should be used for good.
It's about building wealth, not just for yourself, but for the generations that follow.
Absolutely. And remember, knowledge is power.
Right.
This deep dive is just a starting point.
Okay.
Adkins' book provides a wealth of information and practical guidance.
Okay.
So if you're serious about building a lasting legacy, I encourage you to dive in and explore the world of irrevocable business trusts further.
Well said. It's about taking control of your financial destiny and shaping your legacy.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe you'll be the one sharing your own wealth-building story someday.
Now, that's a goal worth striving for. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the Irrevocable Trust Master Plan. We hope you found this conversation informative and empowering.
We've certainly enjoyed sharing our insights with you.
And we hope you'll join us again next time for another deep dive into the world of wealth, legacy, and financial empowerment.
Until then, keep those brains buzzing and those financial goals soaring.